and it's about our marketing technology stack. Are we doing personalization? Are we doing retargeting? Are we measuring it all with analytics? And you know what I basically have to say to that? That doesn't matter at all. I mean, there's a huge ignorance about what you're trying to persuade, and that's the human mind. And that hasn't changed in evolutionary terms at all.
Tim Ash, it is good to have you here on Economics. How are you doing today? How are you feeling?
Great, Joseph. Happy to be with you.
Happy to have you here too. It continues to astound me. Every guest adds to the scope of e-commerce in its own right, but also business and the continuation of tying business into consumer behavior and psychology and all of what gets to the core and the essence really of human behavior. So a little bit of a foreshadowing of what we were talking about today. But Tim Ash, opening question for you. Not that it's a contractual obligation or anything, but I'm just going to do it anyways. Tell us what you do and what are you up to these days?
Well, let's start with what I've done. I studied computer science, cognitive science, did my PhD work, although I never finished, in artificial intelligence, what would now be called neural networks and self-learning systems. And then I had a long career in internet marketing. Specifically, I ran a leading conversion rate optimization agency called Site Tuners for many, many years. I'd say we're one of the original OGs, original gangsters in that field, created over 1.2 billion in value for the Expedias, Facebooks, Nestle's of the world, Google. And after running that, I'd been focusing a lot on, I guess you'd say, how to market and how to persuade people. And that took me back to my roots and my graduate work, which is about persuasion more broadly in psychology. And I realized that at the root of it all is evolutionary psychology. Our brain evolved for a reason. We picked up stuff along the way. So I've been focusing on these universal things that describe how we act, why we behave the way we do, how we really make decisions. And of course, it can be very powerfully applied to marketing, as the crossover is called neuromarketing. So that's what my focus is now: keynote speaking, a lot of executive advisory, as well as my new book, which we can talk about in a bit.
Oh, I'm more than eager to talk about that book for certain. So there's some terminology here that we get to bring to the program really for the first time, and neuromarketing is the term that stands out to me. So is it a strategy all of its own, or is it an element and a component that you find resides within really any strategy that we're aware of?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it's more of foundational. I mean, strategy and tactics are both sort of on the implementation side. But if you want to understand what you're influencing, it's the human brain. I mean, the technology is what we're focused on as internet marketers. And it's about our marketing technology stack. Are we doing personalization? Are we doing retargeting? Are we measuring it all with analytics? And you know what I basically have to say to that? That doesn't matter at all. I mean, there's a huge ignorance about what you're trying to persuade, and that's the human mind. And that hasn't changed in evolutionary terms at all. So if you want to have a long, durable career in marketing, you should understand this foundational stuff about how the brain works, how it evaluates risk, what moves it to act, those kind of things. So I'm focused more on the universal layers. And I think the neuromarketing and the underpinnings of it, which is evolutionary psychology, is absolutely the starting point for anybody doing marketing.
Well, here's a disconnect that comes up a number of times, and it's certainly a disconnect that I encounter quite a bit too. Is we have the seller, we have the brand owner. They have their own human mind. They've got one. Everybody's given one. It's part of the starter kit, and and one would think that we're all sharing this the same organism, although it diverges in millions upon millions of ways. So and then we have this disconnect between us and then the audience, and not being able to understand what it is that the audience wants. Part of it is, there's one of us, and there's potentially tens, if not thousands of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of them. So where is this disconnect coming from, where the seller isn't able to find the answers in their own mind that they can't seem to find in their audience?
That's a great question. I have three answers to that one because it's such a good question. So first of all, we're experts in our own thing. in this case. We run an e-commerce website. We know everything about the product selection and the fulfillment and how running online campaigns. So we tend to overlook what our audience won't. There are millions of little friction points and things like that. So we need to kind of look at it with a beginner's mind. I built my former agency, Site Tuners, on the basis of basically being never satisfied, always advocating for the end user, saying, hey, from their perspective, this sucks. Yes, this is confusing, or they lost the information sent. They can't figure out how to take the next step. So basically, we tend to suffer from what I call greedy marketer syndrome, where that's the second problem. We're experts in our own thing, and then we're just trying to ram stuff down the sales funnel and say, let's focus on the bottom of it and hope dollar signs come out. We're not really supporting the complete customer journey or the things that a lot of people need before making the buy decision. So that's the second one. And then the third thing I would say is there's really almost a universal ignorance about how the mind works. We think that we're rational creatures and we tend to design things for, well, here, you get an 8% discount if you sign up for a year, making me do math and stuff like that. And the buying decisions, all decisions, anything that we want to do and act on is completely irrational, run by the subconscious mind. And I think that I've very rarely met marketers that really understand that to such a fundamental level that that's where they operate from. So greedy marketer syndrome, not understanding that we're really irrational, and being experts in our own thing. That's where the biggest sources of disconnect, I would say, are.
And speaking along those lines, another thing that comes up is there is no shortage of data to collect. Whether we're talking about people still working in the retail space, or even obviously here in the e-commerce space. And I've done sales for a number of years, and happy with some, but not all of it. And what we found was, one of the most prominent ways to sell a consumer on a product was story selling, was appealing to that emotional side and building that connection. And so there's going to be a lot of me using the word disconnect, and I'll try to space it out as best I can, but. You have all of we're swimming, if not drowning, in data, and yet it seems like that last hurdle to really connect with the customer to get the conversion all takes place in that nebulous gray area, emotional monkey brain part where we have we don't really have a way to quantify it. So has there been an attempt to quantify it? Like has anybody gotten close to figuring out what is the real psychology or science going on behind that part that's frankly a mystery?
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is a golden age of understanding the brain and psychology. And there's people working in lots of different silos, whether it's medical imaging or behavioral economics or sales and persuasion techniques. There's lots of ways of attacking it. But I think that we are kind of cracking the skull open, and it is the last frontier. There is a lot of ignorance. I'd say the human mind is literally the most complicated object in the universe. So 100 billion neurons, that's a lot of stuff going on in there. So we have to focus on that, is my point. Again, it's about durability to me. It's not about, it's the latest technique or what's, in other words, I don't care if it's hologram suppositories or whatever the next technology is, or we go back to Google Glass, or that doesn't matter. What we're trying to influence is the same. It's just the channel through which we're trying to influence it. So that's kind of my approach.
So one conversation that I had previously with Bob Braham and his service, Famous, is about enhancing the mobile experience, and trying to use that as a means to convert customers, because lots of people are using their mobile phones.
Sure.
I don't remember exactly where I read it. We're somewhere like, they're trying to jam chips in our brains. Somebody else is like, no, they're not. They don't have to. We got the phones. We jam these things.
That's right. You wake up, you look at it. You go to bed, you look at it. When you're in the bathroom, you look at it. It's omnipresent.
I'd love to give your take on the what you've observed as to be the relationship between between, our device usage and where you think we're going as a species in terms of, is the mobile phone going to be the end game for it? Are we going to get all the way to like Star Trek where, we're still using our mobile devices?
Well, I think that if I'm not a futurist, but I play one on TV, so I'll throw out a couple of things. The first is I think that everything has to be tied to the human body and how we perceive things. So holding something in our hand and staring at a small screen, that's still not the natural evolution of it. It's more like Minority Report. I don't know if you remember that Tom Cruise movie where he's visually moving things around and there's some kind of holographic projection that's in front of him. So we want to kind of be in the world, moving, talking, gesturing. I think typing on a tiny keyboard is not where the last stop. There's a lot more things going to voice on mobile, but even the screen itself is a problem. Eventually, it's going to be just kind of a flick of the wrist and you're projecting something on a nearby flat surface. That's how we're going to get our visuals as part of it.
Okay, well, I'm happy to get your take on that one. All right, so let's talk about this book, Unleash Your Primal Brain. We've warmed up to it. To me, it sounds like, it explores that part of us that is the most deeply rooted, and that it's not, you don't necessarily have to be, say in e-commerce or in marketing to read this book and derive value from that. Is that true? Is it just?
Absolutely. In fact, I would say I wrote it. It's a non-technical overview of the development of the brain, and it's an exciting ride. I wrote it to also be an audiobook and to be easily translated into other languages. I recorded the audiobook, so I read it to be a read through. There's not a single table or footnote or citation in there. I do have a recommended reading list in the back, but it's a wild ride through the human mind, and basically it's what we picked up along the way from the earliest life on Earth. Reptiles, mammals, our primate cousins. And then the last part's what makes us distinctly human, including storytelling, for example, is one of the things you mentioned earlier. And so I unpack all of that. And so it's not for marketers specifically. I mean, if you read this book, you get something out of it regardless of your blinders. So you could read it for business. Broadly speaking, it could be leadership or marketing or sales. You could read it for relationships, for culture, for gender differences, storytelling, all of that stuff. And you can read it for personal development, understanding the importance of sleep, how memory really works, learning, decision-making and risk, all of those things. So really it's the operating system for the 8 billion people on the planet, the things that we all share in common, not our individual differences, as you mentioned earlier.
So this was a rare opportunity for me to ask something that really goes on in my own mind. So, bear with me, audience. Maybe you will all associate with this as well. Just a part of my inner psychology that I don't seem to understand. Which is, we all have our inner voice. There's that little, narrator going inside, talking. And it seems to me that the actual compulsion for the decisions I make have nothing to do with the inner narrator. It seems
Absolutely
that the inner
right.
narrator is just there to justify or validate or contextualize the decisions that are coming from upper management.
Yes.
What role? It's tricky because I don't know exactly how far along you've come in answering in any one given question that I can throw at you, but I'm just going to give it a shot because why not? What role really is the inner voice supposed to play in guiding our actual decision-making process?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think what we need to do is essentially invert the 2,000 years since classical Greece that we've been taught, that the rational mind is what makes us distinct and unique and better than other animals, and it's in charge. And we think of it as sort of as the charioteer and driving and directing and guiding the wild horses of our emotions that are creating the momentum, right? And actually that's backwards. The wild horses are running free, and once in a while, if there's no immediate risk to us, and if it's something that we've never encountered before and is novel, that we kick it up to the conscious brain. But you're absolutely right. That conscious brain, as opposed to the primal brain that I talk about in the book, is really after the fact explaining things. You can see through medical imaging where a decision is made, a certain part of the brain is activated, and then we're able to verbalize it a fraction of a second later. But that verbalization is not the decision. We don't have access to our subconscious or why we really made it. And it's an after the fact rationalization. In fact, I think it was science fiction author, great Robert Heinlein, who said, man is not a rational animal, he's a rationalizing animal. So we rationalize things after the fact and come up with a quote unquote reason why we did something, but it's total bullshit.
This is where I want to really ask you about some of the practical methods, even some of the ones that you've been able to apply for yourself. So, a person gets up, and I would argue that the most important hour of the day is probably that first hour. It sets the pace for the rest of the day, and it's even just being able to wake up on a proper sleep cycle alone is essential. So, I mean, it's the importance of it is determined even before somebody even wakes up. So, how are you? Maybe I should also quantify, because I just want to also use maybe the feedback that you've received to actually understand how long has the book been available for?
The book came out this spring, so it's brand new. And,
okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to check whether or not you've had a chance to receive feedback on that, and that can be
plenty.
Okay, great.
Along the
How have you found to be the most effective way? What have you found to be the most effective way for people to wake up and actually start to get that primal brain to, I guess, cooperate with what it is the rational mind has laid out for the day?
Yeah. Well, you said I would argue that the first hour is the most important. Well, I'm going to argue back at you because I think it's actually the least important.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. You absolutely hit on the key. The key to all survival of all life on the planet is sleep, proper sleep. In fact, there's no creature that lives longer than a few days that doesn't have some form of sleep. Dolphins, which are marine mammals, obviously, they need to breathe. So they figured out to alternate the two hemispheres of their brain. So one's asleep and resting while the other one is not drowning. And migratory birds actually take micro naps and drop out of the sky, but don't quite hit the ground as they do these long migrations. But they need sleep too. It's not optional. It's life support for everything. And so the way you go to sleep is the most important. That last hour, what you've experienced or consciously put into your mind in that last hour before sleep gets processed about 5 to 6 times more than the rest of the day's events combined. And so anything you can do to kind of load up an interesting creative problem that you've thought about or that you need to figure out, sleep on it. It works. Creativity is uncorked during sleep. Proper 7 to 9 hours sleep, including several REM cycles. And also anything that you learn that day, any mental or physical skill, if you don't sleep on it, it doesn't get encoded into long-term memory. You don't get the benefit of the training. And then also sleep calibrates for human beings the nuanced social interactions we have. If you don't get sleep, you get paranoid. You think people are set up against you. You misjudge the micro expressions on their face as being aggressive. So you can't function in any kind of society or group without sleep. So for all of these reasons, sleep is really crucial. And so one of the habits that I have is I do a little gratitude journal. It's not like I write a lot. I just have a bunch of bullet points that just remind me of good things that happened that day. And I write them down in pencil in my little notebook just before I go to sleep. And then that sets the tone for the following day.
Lately in the last couple of weeks, when a habit I had adopted almost close to that, but what I did was top 3 failures of the day, and then top 3 successes of the day. And what I found was I wanted to take some time also to hone in on, what are the mistakes? What are the things that I didn't feel I did particularly well as, focus on the achievement sides as well. Now, it's funny too, as you said, you're going to argue back at me. And I thought, yeah, this is a debate. I don't know if I'm going to hold my own and just,
well, here's how I would do it. Yeah. I think you need to consider both, but doing it at different times. So for example, at night, I would just do the gratitude part. And that's why religious people, for example, they say their prayers, they remember, all the things to be grateful for. They're kind of blessing themselves and the people around them, if you will, at the end of the night before they go to sleep. That's the right thing to do. In the morning, when your mind is fresh and most creative and you have some reserves of that conscious mind executive function, it's called, that's the time to think about problems and how to deal with them. and tackle your biggest ones first. I had a mentor once that told me, kiss the biggest frog. Don't put off, don't do your emails and do all those menial tasks. Take your hardest problem and tackle that in the morning.
And so do you find if you were to, we're getting very much into time management here, but this is important for me anyway. So if you were to plan out your day, would you plan it out in the morning and then set the pace for the day at that point? Or do you find yourself more planning it the night before?
I would say that the planning should be block out time. And that should be done in advance. My friend Nir Eyal wrote a great book called Indistractable. He also wrote one called Hooked, which is about how to make habit-forming products. But Indistractable is all about how to, of course, avoid those distractions. And I think blocking out time is key. That doesn't mean you have to fill every single part of your day, but it does mean you should be intentionally thinking about how you're going to allocate and prioritize your time. And as part of that, you should have unstructured time. I'm going to do nothing, or I'm going to take a nap in the early afternoon. That's something I do often, and just schedule that in. It's not a problem to let yourself rest, let your mind rest. You can't always be going 100 miles an hour. That's not productive. All that, 4 a.m. club bullshit. Again, pardon my French. Unless you're going to sleep at 8 and you're getting a full 8 hours of sleep, you should not be part of the 4 a.m. club. That's not productivity. That's just actually self-destructive, and it's going to kill your mental health.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, it doesn't, people are free to swear in this program. I'm not keeping track, but I think we're around like 12 to 14 F-bombs so far. So yeah, that's no worries about that.
What the fuck? Okay. We just made it to 15.
Okay. All right. So, the feedback part of it, it was such a crucial subject for really each individual. And you said you've received tons of feedback. So I am curious to ask, what's some of the feedback that maybe you didn't anticipate? What's been some of the standout responses that you've gotten to it that,
well, as I was writing the book, people are saying, hey, this is great, Tim. You've unpacked kind of the evolutionary arc and how that made us who we are. But I actually, as a result of feedback, added a final chapter called How to Be More Primal. And it has some of these tips, including getting sleep and other things about how to do that on a personal level and the importance of those things. And again, describing why that's important from an evolutionary perspective.
It's crossed my radar here and there. I never had a chance to get too much into it. But I would absolutely love to hear about, your experience with it. And so for people to understand, here's what I do know, and it's not much, but here's what I do know. You have hardware, and we talk about the physical machines. You have your software, which is the programs, the apps that are running on the hardware. And then wetware is us, the human beings.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That's as far as I know, but in creating this book and in your continued pursuits, and even in your in your history working in e-commerce and digital marketing for so long, is when did wetware cross your radar, and what is it about?
From the very beginning? Like I said, cognitive science was one of my undergraduate majors back at the University of California, San Diego. I double majored in that in computer engineering. So it's always been kind of software and wetware. And to me, the most interesting thing is definitely the wetware. And there's a lot going on in artificial intelligence right now. We're training machines from large data sets to extract kind of human-like levels of appropriate responses, and everything from medical diagnosis to other fields. And it's really quite amazing. But what we're really doing is we're not writing programs anymore. We're just saying, let's take the hive mind, the collective experience of millions of people based on their actual actions, and let that guide us. So in a way, artificial intelligence is being trained up on lots and lots of human experiences. And that's what's making it smarter. It's not like there's some brilliant programmer that's writing code somewhere.
Oh, okay. See, so this is, I guess, a bit of a misconception on my part, is as thinking specifically that it only relates to humans, but it's actually more than that. It's the relationship between us as a hardware running internal software, and how that is providing information so that machines are starting to pick up on these things on their own. So you mentioned it before at the beginning as well, is the self-learning process. Mm-hmm. Now, myself and maybe others have seen Terminator. So, there are, we do get, for some people, the hairs rise up. So, what can you tell us about the objectives of this? And
yeah, well, I don't know that there are objectives. If you want to read a really good book, I'm just going to deflect that by saying there's much smarter people than I have that have thought about this. My friend Mo Gadot, he's written a couple of books. Solve for Happy is one, which is also fantastic. But he just wrote one called Scary Smart, and it's about the approaching singularity. In other words, when AI becomes sentient and what we can do in the very brief time that's left in order to be able to at least influence the course of that. Because after that, all bets are off. I mean, when machines get smart enough to say, hey, human beings are inefficient, there's a good chance they'll try to kind of like work us out of the system in one way or another. I'm not talking about necessarily Terminator robots, but just kind of sideline us. And these things take on a momentum and an emergent quality of their own. For example, you can look at 1 million snowflakes and they're all unique and wonderful. But by looking at a snowflake, you can never predict an avalanche. That's an emergent property of millions of snowflakes. And in the same way, your smart door sensor, your Siri, your Alexa, when they're all talking to each other and turning on your coffee pots and opening your garage doors, those are relatively simple actions, but we just cannot imagine what the system dynamics of that is going to be like when there are billions of them operating in the world in the wild.
I guess the part that I enjoy in using my imagination on this is to somewhat visualize, what society will look like and what society will function like. And again, there, as you say, there's other experts on the subject who've delved into this much further. So feel free to just have fun with this, which is okay. I hear about this, and we hear about automation. That was a big subject last presidential cycle, and in tying into what we're discussing here. And I guess the vision that I have for the future is that, people still want to work, people still want to do things, but it's all going to be within the fields that, well, this machines probably don't really have a hand in. Creative fields, the arts, sports, competition, the Olympics, the entertainment industry. More free time for people to do as they please, and just focus on that kind of a healthy competition. So it's a utopian view of where we're going to go. If somebody walks into a McDonald's and just like taps on the screen and the food shows up, is there going to be a person there? I don't know. Maybe they'll just have a few concierge just to keep people company. But
it's not utopian if McDonald's is still around killing you with that crap food. But by the way, I used to eat a lot of McDonald's. I stopped doing that a long time ago.
I still.
I'm just joking. I'm just giving you a hard time.
I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, McDonald's isn't particularly good. Somebody, a YouTuber that I watch, he said, stop. McDonald's. A single McDonald's meal is more harmful to you than a pack of cigarettes. And so I took that advice and started smoking. I'm just getting it. So again, in having fun with this is, and then we'll move on to, because I also want to talk about the landing page optimization and tying in some of the some of what we talked about in that is, where would you like? What's your utopian vision of society? Whether or not
I don't know that it is a utopian vision. What we're seeing actually is that when you don't need people. Before we used animals, we used draft horses, we used wind power and windmills, and in Holland, and we tried that. That was then the Industrial Revolution. We used fossil fuels and steam to move things. And as you said, what's happening now is more and more is moving into kind of a mental realm. The problem is it's pretty easy to harness all that. So it's easy to exploit. Right now in the U.S., we have 100-year high of income inequality. And so in the Gilded Age, it was the railroad robber barons that concentrated the power. Now it's the Teslas and the Amazons and the Googles of the world. And what you end up with is not something utopian. We're seeing it now. You end up with Uber. Their commercial is everyone needs a side hustle. Really, just to live like a human being in a civilized society, I need a side hustle. Screw that. So I think it actually creates opportunities to concentrate wealth upward, and that corrupts the political process and basically serves the interests of the 1%. And at some point when that gets unsustainable, usually you have some kind of violent or cataclysmic revolution of sorts, when people just feel they're being exploited and it's too unfair. That's something else that comes out of our evolutionary psychology. It's like, screw this, half a loaf is better than none. If you're really giving me just 1% and you're keeping 99% for yourself, that's unfair. And I will actually make things worse for myself in order to not let you have that. So I'm actually predicting something more negative and cataclysmic, not like we're all artists and Olympic athletes.
Okay. I respect that. So what I'll say is, I've been a freelancer for 10 years, right? So, I'm part of the side hustle generation. And in all my sales jobs, in one of them, the whole division was let go. In another one, a new district manager comes in and we were all let go. She just wanted to scorch through. And so in some cases, I was quite good at the job and it didn't matter. It was just, right. It was a loyalty thing. And then I started pursuing this in editing and in podcasting and so, in thanks to places like Upwork, Fiverr, not so much, but, Upwork and Craigslist and all of these platforms, I was really able to actually advance myself. So, you have other people, in they're driving around in Ubers, and I understand that the profit margins are razor thin. It's not exactly sustainable,
right?
But it is giving people options, because if you just look at the money you make, yeah, it's pretty depressing. But what you can also look at is the human connection of every time somebody's in the car, that can open up a new realm of possibilities. Who knows who you have a conversation with? Maybe they have an opportunity for you. And next thing you know, you're not driving Ubers anymore. And now you're a chauffeur.
Well, by the way, as soon as self-driving technology gets good enough and fleet vehicles of electric cars, that's just a few years away, then there won't be a need for drivers. But also, but is it the highest and best use of people on the planet to be driving taxis, essentially? By another name. I would argue that's not necessarily the best either. So I get what you're saying. Some people will benefit from it to some extent, but really, I don't know that this kind of automation is a good thing for society. We're just always on. We're always sleep deprived. We're always stressed out. We never feel like we're off duty. We're always feeling like we're falling behind. There's this hyper competitive capitalism without a social safety net. I personally judge to be a problem, not the solution.
Well, I'm happy to keep on talking with you about this, because I think this is all really interesting subject matter as well. But the other side of it that I wanted to say too is, we talk to people who they've used Amazon, for instance, as a means for success. They've been able to run their business through it. One episode I think you might like, I don't know if you ever met or heard of Dr. Robin Gaster, but he talks greatly about what would be the end game for something like Amazon. So, Jeff Bezos, you can credit him for giving a lot of people means to take matters into their own hands, run their own business. But on the other hand, the amount of wealth that he has amassed, it goes beyond competition, and it just it just goes into
as far as the practical stuff is pretty obvious. Right around 1980, wages went flat. Productivity continued to increase at a straight line. That delta is being harvested. You're being skimmed for money, essentially. So everyone assumes that there's some American dream and we can all be Jeff Bezos. But the fact is, there's one Jeff Bezos. There's only room for one Jeff Bezos. The rest of us are his cattle. And you think you're making things easier for yourself by being able to order something on Amazon and it arrives next day or within an hour if you're in New York. Well, that's great, but we don't talk about the externalities and the price people are paying for that, and the quality of people's lives in those warehouses or any number of other things. So again, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole unless you want to, but I definitely have some strong opinions on that.
I like talking about it. I really do.
It's like if you talk about these Amazon conferences and Amazon sellers, it's this really actually kind of sick thing in e-commerce where you can't do very well without Amazon, but they're separating you from your customers, right? You don't have direct access to your customers. They control everything. They're putting the squeeze on you in terms of whatever arbitrary fees they want to charge. And it's worse than that. They're actually using you for market research. So if they notice you're selling something well, they'll go knock it off in China and have an Amazon Basics version of it that competes with you. And all of a sudden your ads aren't showing up even though you're trying to pay them money to be part of their marketplace. So it's a very, how would you say, incestuous business model. And it's just designed for Amazon. Don't get confused.
Okay, so here's a question for you, and we can tie in some of that gray area that we talked about earlier, the nebulous territory that is quantified somewhat by story selling, and this comes up quite a bit. Is in order for brands to even have a fighting chance, whether they're on Amazon or they're not, is to go beyond just the data, but to actually have some kind of meaningful mission, a mission statement, a story.
Let's talk about exactly. Let's talk about what's the best way to put it. How to position yourself and how to hide from Amazon, because there are very few defensible places left. And you're absolutely right to hone in on the story and the tribe as the basis for that. What I think a lot of e-commerce companies really miss the point is that they're talking about, what's the best way to put it? They're talking about, well, we put up an online store and we sell this stuff and everybody else sells this stuff. Buy your stuff from us. I mean, essentially that's a race to the bottom in terms of pricing. Nobody wins in that scenario, right? So what you need to do is cultivate your own tribe. Don't farm other people's land. You're just a serf or a slave in that scenario. Okay, so you have to be able to attract people to you. That's the first thing that people need to understand. You have to be a magnet to attract the right kinds of customers and audience. And in order to do that, you're absolutely right. You have to have a differentiation. And that differentiation is in the form of, I would say, your origin myth, why you exist. It's that classical story in the form of the hero's journey that you see from the Odyssey to Star Wars, because it's how we take in information. Life was good. Something went bad. I went on a quest. I picked up some unexpected allies. I eventually killed the dragon. And then there was a regreening of the earth. And now I'm trying to bring this mission to the world. So if you don't have that kind of passion, if you can't clearly say why you exist and what you stand for, then you're going to lose. That's it. It's that simple.
Here's a question that I have for you. Oh no, did I just drop it? My goodness, Joseph. This is why I don't do these things live. Okay, so I can get it back. I just have to work my way slowly to it. A lot of the people that I talk to, they have through their various means been able to take control of their own life. They are what I would deem free under the circumstances of the society that we're in. They can choose to fly. They work, they decide how many hours they want to work. They've delegated their tasks to other people, virtual assistants and all of that. And I mean, I've been talking to these people for a year now, and it is very difficult to not want to take a crack at it myself, which is why I am. Now, it seems to me that this is the only way for somebody to actually, become free. Is to reach that economic level, the 6-figure territory, the 7-figure territory. And I don't see really any other way short of, I don't know, going off grid and seeing if there's any undiscovered tribes in the Amazon and just trying to live, completely, primal. So from your point of view, what have you seen to be the most, if possible, ethical, but really the most humane, tangible, realistic way for somebody to be as free as they can in the society? It's very high-minded, but
wow, yeah, that's getting pretty philosophical for a podcast. Yeah. But okay, I'll take a crack at it. It depends on where you're starting out. The thing is, I haven't been one of these, kind of bleeding heart liberals necessarily, but I find myself thinking about privilege quite a bit. Now, I emigrated here from the former Soviet Union. I was lucky enough to get out. And when I was 8 years old, my family emigrated here. And I came to America and I believed in the American dream, and it was about, just work hard and it's a meritocracy and everything's wonderful. But what I didn't realize is just by being white and coming from parents that took an entrepreneurial risk, but to come to this country for a better life for me and my little brother. And by them having advanced degrees and good careers in engineering, when they landed here, it all seemed like, yeah, that's the narrative. But if you're swimming against riptides of, nobody in my family ever went to college, or there's overt discrimination, or, I have to pay more for my mortgage because of the neighborhood I'm buying in, or any number of things. When you have all of this pulling on you and holding you back, I really think it's a disadvantage. So the discussion you're having, and that I'm happy to have, is that, yeah, that's fine for educated white people in this country, but that leaves out massive groups. So I'm much more concerned with what kind of support systems can we set up? How can we help each other? What's cooperation look like in this day and age? The center is not holding. If everybody's out for their individual self-interest, then you get to live in a gated community somewhere with armed guards and German shepherds. Congratulations. That's if you're quote unquote successful. That's not the society I want to live in. I went to public school all the way through graduate school. My kids are going through public school. I want to be in the mainstream society and say, hey, how do we pull together? Since the kind of post-World War II period, there hasn't been that sense of collective mission. Everyone's talking about their freedoms these days, as if their individual self-interest should govern everything. So that's my philosophical answer to your philosophical question.
Sure. So what I'd love to do, I mean, I know your time is premium, to put it mildly, because I wasn't sure exactly how far along we were going to be able to get into this, right? I just met you today, so more than happy to continue along with these. I'll have some time to think about it as well, but that's as far as I'll go. I just wanted to hear your take on it.
Absolutely.
All right. And I am one of those. I am one of those people you describe. I should say.
Well, I'm becoming more that way. My wife's a social worker, so I've just she's had a long-term effect on me. Instead of being a rugged libertarian, I'm more of a my commie roots are coming back. I'm good with socialism, the kind they have in Europe, where people don't have to think about food insecurity.
Yeah, I mean, because it is all about our perspective, right? And I come from the arts. I come from a creative media background, and so for me, going through school, K through 12, and then high school, and constantly being in these structured environments, and going through, in many cases, nightmares. I know it's all perspective, right? I'm sure you come from the Soviet Union, where there was a lot more nightmarish things going on there. Again, it's relative, and so I mean, a lot of that just comes from like me. I really am just compelled, and I crave that freedom. And if that comes at a cost to me, then so be it. If it actually comes at a higher danger, then so be it. And I think the ongoing phraseology that we use on the show is that, if we are running a business, we are going to be of service to others. We don't want to just amass our money, Scrooge McDuck style, and sort of run gold coins. We want to know that we're being compensated for doing something good for a large amount of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think
willing to take that risk, willing to get the reward for it.
And then one thing though, that they've done this long-term longitudinal study. They took a cohort of people that went to Harvard and some of their South Boston poorer cousins, if you will, Southies, and they've tracked them for 70 odd years. There have been 4 program directors over that span of time. And they're basically asking the questions of what makes a good life. And it turns out that money is not the answer. I mean, there's statistical evidence that says being independently wealthy makes you 3% happier. Mm-hmm. That's a fact. And then, that's a statistically significant effect, but it's only 3%. And what actually makes you happier are strong social contacts. We're highly social creatures. The last part of my book, Unleash Your Primal Brain, is called Hypersocial. And it talks about that. We cannot survive in isolation on our own. So it's about, again, this myth of the entrepreneur, again, whether it's the Bezos or the Musk of the world or the Gateses of the world, is just that, a myth that's built on a lot of other people's cooperation and many, many turns of luck, I believe. But what we need to do is have healthy social relationships, good sleep, and being engaged in the world, being curious, being part of a community. Those are the things, friendships, strong ties like that. That's where you should be investing, quote unquote, if you want a good life, not grinding it out harder by checking your email at 2 a.m.
And, so that was one take. There was a podcast you did in 2020. And one of the terms that was brought up there is that, being in isolation drives us insane.
Literally. That's right.
And that was in October of 2020. And so I don't know, like 6 or 7 months into the pandemic. And so once in a while I do pandemic questions. I try not to bring it up too often, but what have you observed to be the effects are what could be the long-lasting, long-term effects that we're going to be dealing with 5 years from now, 10 years from now, as a result of this hyper isolation. And then what have you seen to be the pockets of innovation or means that people have been able to find ways to socialize even under the circumstances?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say that overall the effect has been hugely negative, and as I mentioned, I talk about in my book, we're highly social creatures. We shouldn't be isolated. Just as mammals, we're pack animals, and if we're alone, we die. But as human beings, we have the largest close tie social groups of any mammal. So by far, that famous Dunbar number, the Dunbar number of 150. It's really, we have a close group of 100 to 200 people that we can keep very intimate track of and understand all the social dynamics in a group that size. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that, then you can't function, essentially. There's so Zoom meetings are a very poor substitute for that. I'm sorry to say, it's just not the same. I'll give you a very close to my heart example. I have two teenagers in the house. One's, depressed clinically, and on medication for it. The other one had a real rough year with virtual school and failed 3 classes. When I was signing up to retake a couple of those for summer school, this is San Diego Unified School District, so a big one with, hundreds of thousands of students. They said that, well, I'll let you guess. What percentage increase do you think there was in people that had to take summer school, that basically failed at least one class over a normal year?
Over a normal year?
Yeah.
36%.
How much?
36.
Very, very specific, Mr. Spock. I like that. No, actually, 1,500 is the right answer.
Okay.
The number of people failing at least one class.
Go under 100%. Okay, yeah. Fair.
The number of people failing at least one class that past school year was 1,500% higher. That's just, so actually I think there's different populations are at risk for different reasons, but the one I'm kind of focused on is that 12 to 25 cohort. Basically, when you're outward focused before your brain's fully formed and you want to build social ties with your friends, not with your parents, but with your friends and peer group. And those are the kids that have suffered the most, the teenagers and young adults.
So to tie this back into business, seemingly every brand over the last year has in some way, shape, or form commented on this. And in spite of this hyper isolation, the most common term is like, we're all in this together, or, we're all going to do this together. It's a lot of messaging on unity. And to me, it consistently came across as disingenuous. It's like, okay, well, they have to say it, because if they don't say it, it's like social inflation. Like if they don't say it, then their value decays because they're not keeping up with the rate of everybody else saying it in the social Overton window. And so, from your point of view, have you? I don't know exactly how often you're interacting with the different brands and businesses on a day-to-day basis at this point, but from your point of view, have you found any businesses have actually like cut through the disingenuous side of it and has actually found ways to improve the social situation and help keep people connected in a more meaningful way?
No, and I haven't, and that's not their job. And again, that's the problem, is that businesses are there to make money. Social good organizations are there to help their particular tribe, your church or your synagogue or what have you. And government has stepped back. For 40 years. We've been dismantling anything at the federal level and a lot at the state level too, that were used to be support systems for people. So we're kind of thrown to the wolves, and there's nobody in the stopgap. And you put a crisis like this, and it's very brittle. Stuff starts breaking. So you have huge spikes in crime and domestic violence and suicide and depression. And that's just the price we're paying for how we structured this society, I believe. But no, business hasn't done a good job, and other than PR lip service, there's nothing coming out of them that's at all.
I mean, that's what's the finality on that. I didn't know, but I was certainly happy to ask that one. All right. So we're about 10 minutes until we hit the hour mark. Just so I know, like, how long can I keep you a little bit longer?
Yeah, a few minutes. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So here's one that I've really wanted to ask you. this is kind of this own theory that I'm working on. If you look at the generational life expectancy, there's a pretty significant increase, and it's not that long ago. There were, I would say, a few generations past, the life expectancy, you get to the 50s, 60s. Prior to that, by the time they're 30, they have 12 kids and they're fighting bears. But now, if people are being born today, they have the prospect of living upwards to 150, 200.
Well, it's news to me, but I'll take your word for it.
Maybe not 200, but certainly life expectancy can be a lot longer. So realistically, let's say 90, 100 consistently. I think that's fair and realistic. They're contending with, I think, a new kind of anxiety that is unprecedented, because what I'm finding, and this is my own experience too, being a millennial, is the milestones haven't changed, but the time it takes to achieve those milestones does. That mental maturity to reach more of the adult level. To me, I don't know. I compare my 30s now really to my dad's early 20s. Finally, at both of our points, we're finally independent, are starting to earn our own, earn our own enough income, self-sustaining incomes. So, have you observed any changes in the physiology of the human mind based off the fact that that people have a much more anxious future to look forward to?
Well, I would say this from an evolutionary perspective, even though in one sense we're like that proverbial insect frozen in amber, our mind's not really changing. It's just not for the foreseeable future. At the same time, the rate of evolution actually has increased over the last 50,000 years. And there's a kind of a speeding up of human beings specifically, not all life. And I think that if you look at IQ measurements, people are getting smarter every generation. And there hasn't been any break in that at all. So what used to be 100 average IQ 50 years ago, that's going to be kind of moron level these days. That's certainly true. My kids, their fluency with technology and the speed with which they can assimilate information in real time and video and streaming form is just uncanny. So I play word or Boggle, which is kind of like a word finder game. And my daughter,
I know Boggle. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I play it with my wife and we do all right. She usually beats me, but our 14-year-old daughter who's played, I think it's called it's like word scramble or something like that, where you do it on your phone. Her scores are usually more than my wife's and I combined when the three of us are playing. So it's not fair. We need some kind of handicap. So certainly there's a quickening of that intelligence. I would say that's one thing I've noticed.
With your expertise at your disposal and your educational background, one thing I'm wondering as we get close to wrapping this up is, what drove you into the digital marketing for this? Was there other verticals that you could have taken?
Well, I'm a bit older than you. I'm not a millennial. I'm a Gen Xer. And so for me, it was like, I was preparing for a career that didn't exist when I went to college. Again, I had computer engineering and cognitive science as a background. Well, that's both the kind of the quantifiable and the quality stuff and the quantity stuff put together. It was a perfect background for internet marketing. So when the internet started, the consumer internet in the mid 90s started taking off, I jumped in at the beginning of the internet era and started my first agency. So it was a perfect preparation for that career, I guess you could say. I couldn't have done better. I just didn't know what the career would be. And now I've kind of come full circle. Yeah, I applied it to marketing. As I mentioned, I made 1.2 billion in documented value for our clients during my agency days. But now I'm more concerned with the universal stuff, more durable stuff, as I mentioned, which is why I've shifted gears to the evolutionary psychology. I think it's a huge source of insight for both professional, cultural, and personal development. So I don't know if that answers it.
I mean, the one thing that I guess I'd love to get your take on as well, just to extract from that as well, is you were there in the trenches during the .com bubble and the burst. I'm just fascinated to hear about what was your What was your experience of
Well,
that?
the
What were the
journey,
takeaways from it? Yeah.
Yeah, the journey was like this. I started my first essentially .com incubator in the mid 90s, and we helped launch new .coms or acting CTO on their management teams, helped them for raised first rounds. It was still a cottage industry back then. Wrote some of the first dynamic database driven websites for a variety of verticals. And then we moved into marketing those in the form of pay-per-click marketing. In the early days, again, a company called goto.com that became Overture, that became Yahoo Search. But basically PPC as that was just starting out. And what we found is that we were driving high quality traffic from our PPC campaigns, but it wasn't converting. And so we got into affiliate marketing and started, doing PPC arbitrage on a performance basis. But the traffic was quality. Where we were sending it to was crap. And so I saw the bigger opportunity as being the website and the quality of the website. And that's how we got into and became one of the premier agencies in what's now known as conversion rate optimization, improving website experiences. So it kind of became the tail wagging the dog. We sold off our PPC management and our super affiliate side and just focused on improving web experiences. So that's kind of the arc of my internet marketing career.
And I did say that I was going to ask you about landing pages, so I'm just going to make sure I get this question in before we wrap up, which is, you've seen quite a few of them, and you've certainly seen ones that have that are from conventional brands that most of us just think of at the top of our heads. So, what have been the consistent things, positive and negative, that have made landing pages, good or frankly?
I'll tell you some common problems with landing pages. I'll just do them rapid fire. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, I think most of us suffer from greedy marketer syndrome, which means we want to squeeze the bottom of the sales funnel and hope money comes out. So we don't really support the whole customer journey, and we should. You actually have an advantage if you start a conversation with me early in the customer journey before you can sell me anything, because you become the exclusive source of information for me. So if you have the right to communicate with me, that's very powerful. So I think designing stuff for the complete customer journey instead of bottom feeding at the point of sale is really, really important. So content marketing is a big part of that. But I don't mean blog posts or frequent tweets. I mean like durable, downloadable stuff or informational videos that are wrapped right into your web experience and have a big effect. And that also includes email follow-up sequences that are non-promotional but are more educational in nature as you work people down the funnel. So that's one aspect, is supporting the complete customer journey is often very much missing on websites. Another thing that companies get wrong is they think that they should be selling sunshine and unicorns. They're positive. Our service or product is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, and you should buy it because you'll have whiter teeth and fresh breath and, marry a good looking spouse. Well, really from an evolutionary psychology standpoint, we should be talking a lot about the negatives to get me off my comfortable spot, to get me to make any kind of decision. I can't be satisfied. I have to feel a lot of pain. And the bigger that pain, the more value I assign to the solution. That literally means monetary value. So just like they say in the workout world, no pain, no gain. If you can't create a pain in me, you're not going to gain or benefit from it. So the proper way to market is to take me off of my comfortable spot in the middle, drive me down into the depths of hell and despair, and then back out into the light and show me what life is like in heaven. And that contrast between heaven and hell, if you will, is the value I'm going to place on your solution. So don't start talking to me about how wonderful life is. Talk to me about my problems and rub salt into the wound.
That makes sense. I mean, if somebody happens to be in a positive state of mind and they just see more positivity, they just say, yeah, that's great. And then they move on.
Exactly. They don't feel the need to change. Pain is the teacher. Pain is the thing that motivates us to do something about this unpleasant situation we're in. And the longer term you make that, the more you dig at the underlying implications of that, the full cost of staying on the current path, that it's really not okay. That's where you start. So for example, if you're selling tooth whitening, some people would say, oh, you'll have whiter teeth and a great smile. And that's how a lot of commercials on TV are. I would go with this approach. Are those grayish yellow teeth making you embarrassed in social situations? Do people think you have resting bastard face? Are you having problems getting a date because you never smile? Are you going to die alone and your cats are going to eat you because no one's checking up on you and they're starving? That's how you sell tooth whitening. And a lot of companies say that's off brand for us. We never say mean things. We don't even about our competitors, or we never even compare to what it's like not having our product or service. I think that's fighting with one hand tied behind your back, or actually both hands.
Well, I got to say the way you contextualize it is unlike anyone else. This is means for contextualizing it. Heck of a takeaway to wrap this bad boy up. So let's do that. Tim, again, it's been great to meet you. It's been great to talk to you. I hope at some point down the line I get another chance to follow up on some of the threads that we unraveled today. Because I think for me, I do this show. It's like, I like debating. Preferably, I like knowing what I'm talking about, but I don't always have that luxury. So but to want to turn it into a debate for the entirety of the episode is like, no, I still got my obligations to do for the company and my lovely audience who come here to have the economics experience. So all of that out of my system, I just want to say thanks. This has been a fantastic episode. I'm really happy to have shared an hour with you today.
Yeah. And if people want more information about my background or how I can help with e-commerce consulting, just go to timash.com. And if you're interested in my book, Unleash Your Primal Brain, Demystifying How We Think and Why We Act, just go to primalbrain.com. In fact, you can go to primalbrain.com and pick a chapter out of the table of contents, and I'll send you the chapter of your choice as a PDF.
Okay, fantastic. I think I might just do that myself. All right. Well, that actually was the second half of the final question, just to let the audience know how they can make contact. The other part of it, just for the fun of it, if there's any last bits of wisdom or like a Chinese proverb you enjoy sharing, you're more than welcome to. But otherwise, we are good to go.
Yeah, I'd say we touched on sleep earlier. Go to sleep. Put your phone in another room. Don't sleep in the same room with your phone.
Yeah. Get an alarm clock, people. I've had an alarm clock for the last few months.
Makes $10 on Amazon.
To know that the difference between having to actually turn on my phone in the morning is just enough to kind of resist getting into that bad habit stack. So I'm totally on board with that. All right. With that, to my audience, as always, it is an honor and a privilege to collect this information. Do I use it for my own benefit? You bet. And share it with all of you. So one more thank you to Tim Ash for the road. Thank you, sir.
It's my pleasure.
Same here. All right, everybody else, take care. And we will check in soon.
I have a background in marketing and design. I've worked at
Hey, this is Joseph from Ecomonics. Just wanted to thank you for being here and for giving this content your time and attention. I hope you learned something. I can say with certainty, I have learned something with every episode that I have done, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. There's a couple things you can do to help us out. If you want to check out the audio content, we are available on all major podcast platform distributors. And while you're there, give us a 5-star review. It helps a lot. And while you're here on YouTube, there's a lot of things you can do to help out as well. It's not going to take very long. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button for this episode, and hit the notification bell so when we have new content for you, it's going to be at your doorstep ASAP. Lastly, this podcast is created by Debutify, the best Shopify template available. It is 100% free for you to start, and it can change your life. It can make you so much more free than you are right now. So if this episode wasn't enough to convince you, I think a few more might do the trick. So have at it.